Now, let's talk about data handling, data storage, and data retention. Data handling is an administrative control. We only want individuals that are trusted, that should have access to the data, to be able to handle it and, access it. We have very clear policies on who can access the data, how, when, and why they are allowed to access it, which also feeds back to our need to know. And we should have auditing and logs in place to make sure, after the fact, that whomever accessed the data actually had a good reason to do so. In most places where I have worked, we have had pretty good logs, but not all of them would have a backend audit system. For the exam, assume that we do. Remember, perfect world. We have the top-down IT security governance approach we would want in our organization. People are always more important than stuff, and you have the time and the money to do your due diligence and your due care. Now, how we store our data is also very critical. Remember, the attacker looks for the weakest link. If, for instance, we use backup tapes, then they should be kept in a secure, climate-controlled, and preferably a geographically distant location. While the vast majority of the restores that we do are not critical and is mostly just this user deleted this file and now they need it back, the rare ones, but also the ones that are actually important, where we have a disaster, then we need to make sure that while the backup tapes are stored in a geographically distant location, it is not going to take us an excessive amount of hours to get the tapes back so we can restore. We need to be able to get our tapes back in a reasonable time and a reasonable manner. This should also be something we look at when we look at our MTD, maximum tolerable downtime. If our MTD is 4 hours, it's going to take us 2 hours to restore the system, the hardware. That leaves us at the most 2 hours to get the system up and running with the software that we need. But if the backup company is going to take 4 hours to deliver that tape, then we're past the MTD. And this is part of what we do in our disaster recovery plan. We do the testing, we do the walkthrough, and then we might realize that the tapes are going to get here too late. Then we need to negotiate another deal with whomever is storing our tapes. Another caveat here, it is very normal for the vendor that stores our tapes to come and pick them up at our location. Whomever they have that comes and picks up the tapes needs to be licensed and bonded, meaning if they, for whatever reason, lose the tapes, they are liable and they have insurance. I have worked in places where we had a list of people that were allowed to come pick up our tapes. An actual printout where these 10 people can pick up the tapes. If whomever shows up is not on that list, they don't get the tapes. Many places use backup tapes because they are relatively inexpensive and you can store a ton of data on them. And when I say a ton of data, the last ones I have seen in use were LTO-8s. Their native capacity is about 12 terabytes and their compressed capacity is about 30 terabytes. That's a ton of data on a tape that is not very big. For the people in the US who have not seen them before, the tape over here on the right is about 4 by 4 inches and then almost an inch tall, I think 0.85 or something. For the people not in the US, it is about 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters by 2 centimeters. And now for some tape horror stories. Some of them are older and some of them are not. Both the ones that I have heard about and the ones that I have experienced are good examples of things we should never ever do. Some of them were people that said, we need an offsite storage of tapes. We don't really have the budget, so I'm just going to take them home with me. If something happens, we have the tapes. But the tapes were unencrypted. Their house was broken into. and all that confidential data was stolen. I have seen some places where they had them in storage cabinets. You can go pick up a pen, some paper clips, and a couple of storage tapes that are unencrypted. And then finally, my own example, when I was doing that relocation of data centers in Hawaii, and we found more than 10,000 storage tapes under the floor in the data center. I mean, it was more secure than some of the other examples because most people would not have access to the data center. And on top of that, why would they look under the floor? But some of them were tapes we needed to restore data with. If we have a disaster in that data center, well, then all that data is lost because the backup is in the floor. So yeah, horror stories, but these are actually decisions where people thought this was a good idea or at least a solution to a problem, where you obviously understand that we need to keep our data secure at all stages and on all media. And all media means all media. We cannot have that weak link in our chain. The paper needs to be just as protected as the tapes. You should assume that the attackers are very good at what they do. They will do a ton of research before even attacking us. They learn that we have a pretty good defense in depth. They're not going to waste their time on trying to attack our actual servers. If they find out that we keep our storage tapes downstairs next to a public restroom, well then, they just need to get access to that restroom and then break into the room next to it where our storage tapes are kept. Now, after all that doom and gloom, let's look at data retention. It is very common in large organizations to have petabytes and petabytes of data, and it's just not feasible to keep all that data on disks, especially if it's not data that we actively use all the time. If we're in finance or healthcare, there are certain requirements for how long we have to keep certain data. So we use a ton of backup tapes. Let's say it's patient records. Well, then they need to be kept forever, meaning every day where we do a backup, that backup gets sent to a backup facility and it's going to sit there as long as we are in business. And if we go out of business, then that data needs to be transferred to someone else. Now, if we're at the same hospital and it is payroll records, let's say they have a 7-year retention. We do the weekly backup, we send that backup to the backup facility, and then it just sits there for 7 years. Unless, of course, we need to use it for a restore. Let's say that never is the case. After 7 years, the tape is returned to us, and since it is 7 years old, it is unlikely we can reuse the tape. So we need to destroy it. We keep our data as long as it is required by law or as it is useful. And the useful part, take that with a grain of salt. There may be privacy laws that prevents us from keeping the data as long as we want. Let's again go back to the payroll records. We kept them for 7 years. We can now dispose of them. There are no legal requirements for us to keep them. Now, if there's a privacy law saying we have to destroy them now, well, then we have to. If there is not, let's say we want to do some analytics on our payroll data, well, then we would keep it around. Once that is done, we would probably destroy it. In most cases, once the retention is over, we get rid of the backups. And this is where you, as the IT security professional, need to know the laws, the regulations that govern your country, your state, and the type of business that your company is in. If we accept credit cards, but we are not a credit card processor, in many states and countries, we need to keep a log of the transaction, but not the actual transaction. Once we have handed that data off to the credit card processor, we need to get rid of it. We're legally not allowed to keep it. It doesn't matter if we want to. Many of the large attacks in the US where credit cards were compromised, they had kept data that they were not supposed to. Remember, weakest link. And with that, we are done with this lecture. I will see you in the next one.